If a state enacts any sort of a law or starts to treat some of its citizens differently from other citizens, this raises questions under the Equal Protection Clause of the 14th Amendment of the Constitution. No state shall deny to any person within its jurisdiction the equal protection of the law. So that's one of the things. And if the Constitution also forbids a state from enacting any sort of law or treating its citizens in any way that deprives them of life, liberty, or property without due process of law. That's the Due Process Clause in the 14th Amendment. So let's look at some of the ways in which these two important constitutional provisions have begun to protect people with disabilities and their rights. First, let's look at the Equal Protection Clause. The way that the Equal Protection Clause has been interpreted by the Supreme Court recognizes that sometimes it is justified for a state to treat certain groups of citizens differently than other groups of citizens. But when it does so, it has to have a very good reason, a compelling reason. And the specific form of different treatment has to be justified by that good reason. Now, there are certain groups of people that the Supreme Court recognizes as suspect classes. For example, African Americans. Because of our country's sorry history of discriminatory treatment of African Americans, any action that a state takes to treat them differently than any other people is going to be treated very, very, very suspiciously by the court. And if a law like that is challenged in court, it's given strict scrutiny. In other words, the state's reason has to be very, very compelling. And the state is going to have to prove that the specific form of different treatment that they've suggested is specifically tailored just to meet that compelling reason. People with disabilities have not been specifically acknowledged to be one of those suspect classes, but a lot of people think that the court is looking more and more carefully at laws involving people with disabilities, getting something kind of close to a strict scrutiny, even if that's not quite what it is. And even if this strict scrutiny isn't appropriate, the Equal Protection Clause always requires that the government has to establish at least a rational relationship between the reason for the unequal treatment and the means used to address whatever the problem was that the government was trying to address.